Okay. The next item is the consent agenda. Hopefully
I
you all
move
saw.
consent agenda.
Okay. A second.
I'll second it.
Is that Kelsey?
Yep.
Okay. Has everyone gotten a chance to see the addition to the hiring action that is now on the agenda and seen the resume? Okay. I guess the question is, does anybody feel uninformed and that they need to pull this for any reason or not vote on it? But it looks good. Okay. All in favor of approving the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Any opposed?
Unanimous.
Say none. Any abstentions? Okay. So the consent agenda passes. I will be moving on to executive limitations and taking a look at approving the fiscal year 27 budget.
Okay, so we'll get started. Sue, I'll turn it over to you to talk through the updates, and yeah, we'll start with giving Sue the opportunity to provide updates to the board for you to be able to ask questions, and then we will vote after that.
Except, I believe there will be a prior amendment before.
Well, I think there's the potential for that. We'll go through the process, and wherever we land is what you'll vote on. So we'll just begin. Go ahead, Sue.
Right. So you're seeing a little bit of an increase from the last draft. We had, I think, a 2.6% increase in the budget, the voted budget, and we are at 3.2% now. The changes that are included in this draft, I summarized a little bit in the write-up for you. Big chunk of that, obviously, is the final BBA rate. Randy, what would that come in at? 4.9%, I think, was their increase.
Correct.
So that's now included. And I've done, my final tweaks, going through all of the numbers, making sure we have what we need in the operations budgets, in our food service budget. So you'll see some slight changes there. We have added in that 0.4 technology teacher position that we discussed at the last meeting, but that hadn't been included in the numbers yet. So that is now included here. And then Randy and I went back through, took a second look at some of the enrichment numbers after the discussion from the last meeting, and we did increase the enrichment stipends a little bit further by another $10,000 to sort of support that middle school, the add-on of the middle school, and additional sort of after-school activities that might be needed there. So those are the major changes as far as the voted budget goes. And obviously there's some things to talk about, which I've bulleted out. After looking at the history of the secondary enrollment, that's packet page 25, I believe, gave you sort of a breakdown of what were the number of students that we knew were coming, at the time that we created the budget, and how many more did we budget for, and how many more actually came. And so what were those variances? So after taking a look at that, I landed on a number of 25, which is what I've included in the draft. You guys obviously can make a change to that. We can add more, we can add less, always keeping in mind that tax stabilization reserve, the main driver for having that tax stabilization reserve is because so much of our budget is dependent upon how many kids show up for secondary tuition. And that the change in secondary tuition numbers can have a significant change to our budget, or produce a deficit or a surplus. And so that tax stabilization helps if we are under with that student count and we needed to draw from it. So it is there. So just to, keep that in mind. So that's one thing I want you to be thinking about. We talked a little bit about this last time we talked about the surplus. We are expecting a little bit of a surplus at the end of the year. Randy has mentioned we are concerned about not having federal funds, or having them being significantly reduced. We still don't have any information on that, what's going to happen next year. So the proposal in front of you, how the draft is prepared, is simply to leave that anticipated surplus for this year alone. Let it sit. We don't have to use this year's surplus because we don't really know what it's going to be, right? Things could change. It could grow. It could be less. And given the amount of positions that we fund for TNG through the federal grant. Leaving those funds alone may be the right move. In talking about what Jeff had suggested, that we have tax stabilization, we could use those funds for reducing the tax rate this year. And so we talked a little bit about that at the last meeting. We'll talk about that again a little further down the line. And I gave you a presentation of tax rate, and then on Friday, the final CLAs came in. So that's why we added that updated tax rate chart. So you just see where everybody's CLA actually landed and what the town tax rates are looking like for each individual town.
What page number?
Let's see. The new tax rates are packet page 26 and 27.
Okay. That's
So
what I thought.
27 will show you the rates on a town by town basis. The other thing I added onto that I thought it'd be good for us to start tracking this is as the towns do reappraisals, what that looks like. And I thought it was interesting that Manchester just did their reappraisal in FY24, and we are already, for the town of Manchester, lower than what the CLA was in FY24 now, 3 years later. So it is kind of crazy how it moves that quickly. Does anybody have any questions about what we discussed so far?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I missed who went
Jeff.
their hand up first.
Jeff and then
Randy?
Lindsay.
I mean, Lindsay? Oh, Jeff. I
Jeff,
see.
yeah.
Yeah, on the federal funds and our concern relative to having them disappear in some way, shape, or form.
Mhm.
Do we have any firm information? Is this just a general type of concern, or is there anything in the pipeline that would suggest specifically that these funds might be rescinded or repealed? Obviously, based on the federal administration's history, I understand why there would be some apprehension about not receiving those federal funds. But have we learned anything above and beyond that specifically that we should be fearful that they might go away, other than a general sort of a policy concern?
Do you want me to jump in, Sue, or do you want to?
I will just say that we don't have anything specific. If we did, then we could budget against it. But we have received confirmation from the state that they don't know what the upcoming numbers are going to be. And typically they would have an idea of what was going to be in the pike. Not that we would necessarily know our allocation yet. We don't get that to the spring. But they've been clear that they don't have any information to share with us either.
I think that just to add to that, I'll say U.S. Department of Education had communicated to state education agencies that there's been all kinds of direction around anticipating fewer dollars. There's been, different organizations providing advice to districts about how to prepare for the potential lack of federal funds. So it has been discussed sort of on a official level, but nobody knows the extent to which there'll be reductions or whether there will be any reductions at all.
Right. So just to follow up on that, the monies that we're talking about have been appropriated in the federal budget?
We get allocations and we fund positions with that money. So we have staff who are paid out of federal funds.
I understand all that.
If we don't receive those federal funds, we still have to pay those teachers. So that would come out of our local budget, which would potentially lead to deficit.
But what I'm saying is the federal funds have to come from somewhere, the federal government, which has to appropriate them at some point in time. So are these funds, I assume, already appropriated, but they may not be allocated?
That's what we don't know. That's the
Somebody
missing
should
piece
know
of
that, because that's a public document that, anyway.
Not the Congress hasn't passed anything.
Right.
Well, they passed a budget.
They passed, what did they call it?
The big, beautiful bill.
But that didn't include the full budget.
No, I don't know what, but anyway, I won't belabor that. We have a lot. I'm just concerned that I mean, I'm concerned as you are about the federal monies, but we can talk about that in greater detail at some point.
But I think what Randy said is the point is we don't know. And
Right.
everything could be the same, right? Like we could get our allocation and next year and everything could be fine. Or the feds could cut and not appropriate the money that they typically would, therefore not having enough to divvy out to the state. And that's that piece, that appropriation piece is what we would typically know from the state. Again, not what our allocation would be, but the fact that funds were coming. That's what they don't know yet. And that's what they've shared with us.
Right. I guess my only point, which I'm not making too well, is there's a difference between whether they cut before and not put something in the budget, or if they try to rescind something that's already been appropriated. Because on the latter point, various entities, various states have been successful fighting rescissions in court. So it's only a minor point I'm trying to make in that.
Okay. Lindsay, I think you're next.
I just wanted to make a note that I'm actually disappointed, knowing everything that we've been going through with the school consolidations, to see that BBA once again is increasing their rates. Every year I say this. I think when I first started, the rate was 17, 18 per kid. Now we're up to 23. So I was really hoping that BBA would have done something, knowing Act 73 is sending districts into chaos, and not come with a 4% increase. So I know that's not on any of you guys, but I just wanted to make that note.
Thank you, Lindsay. Emma, looks like you're up next.
I just have a quick question. So if we budget, so you said we budgeted for 25. If, like, let's say we get 30 and then we have to draw on reserve funds, but then we get more than even our reserve funds can handle, what happens then? Like, do we have more funds on top of that, or would we have to ask for more money? Sorry, I don't know. Stupid.
So we can deficit spend if we needed to. And so if, for example, next year, 30 kids come instead of the 25 that we've included, and everything else is equal, we're spending exactly what we budgeted. Therefore, that puts us into a deficit. So we can deficit spend during the year. And then when we do this at this same time next year, when we're doing the FY28 budget, that's when we would include that deficit in what we raised from education spending. We would roll that into the next year's budget, and we would ask for that money from the state at that point in time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Jim.
Yeah, just wanted to make sure I have it kind of correct. We're using the 25 surplus to reduce taxes in this year. The 26 estimated surplus that would be there to kind of help in case of shortage of federal funds, et cetera. That's really that's about the 230,000 number.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we'd have that plus that, then on top of that is our tax stabilization reserve.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
One other thing I want to point out. I'm sorry.
I was just curious if you knew the number of what's in our tax stabilization reserve at this point.
Yes.
2.7 million. 2.7 million.
Packet page 12. Yes, 2.7 million.
Thank you.
And we've drawn from that $1 million at a time, right? 4 cents on the tax rate, and so it can be it can dwindle quickly. But we also really haven't had to draw from it that much because in not filling a lot of positions during the school year, we've had surpluses to draw from. So yeah. One other thing I want to mention is Jeff had brought up that great point last meeting about perhaps not putting money into the building reserve, given what we're considering moving forward with perhaps a new building or perhaps some renovations and going out for bond and all of that. So I did exclude any transfer into that reserve fund, but I have increased the transfer requested for the bus reserve fund. Buses are now upwards of $135,000, $140,000, and that's this year. We know they will continue to go up. We have a replacement schedule that's got 3 replacements going on in the next couple of years coming up at a time. And we want to make sure we have enough money to cover. Derek's pretty much identified, he's given me every single bus, like when are we going to need to replace that? So we've got the schedule built out for another 15, 20 years, however long it is. And this is enough money on an annual basis right now, assuming buses continue to rise a little bit in cost. Remember that we haven't had to raise this or draw on our bus reserve a lot lately because we had that great grant to have 4 electric buses replace 4 of our current buses. We didn't have to replace those buses ourselves because we got that money from the federal government. So now it's time to start doing some replacements ourselves.
Great. Thank you, Sue. Jeff, I see that you're up next, but since you've spoken, I'm going to go around the horn to, I think it looks like Dick and then Jessica and then Rogan.
Sue, a couple of meetings ago, you said that you were designing this particular budget without filling in prospective unknowns, which we might have to cover, because you felt that that was unfair to the taxpayers to fund stuff before it's necessary to fund. Is that still operable? Because if it is, then Jeff's line of questioning with respect to what the federal government is going to do is not part of the design of the way the budget this year has been designed, so that the taxpayers are only being charged by known charges.
Yeah, I mean, and that's typically how we would design any budget, right? Not. I sort of recall this conversation, but I'm not remembering exactly what we were talking about, Dick. And I'm wondering if maybe this was at a BRSU meeting where we were talking about the federal grant.
It was both.
Yeah, and so that is how we would design any budget. I mean, I think it's we're putting in the budget what we intend to spend, and so since these federal positions say we intend to fund those with federal money. We have in the past, we are currently, and we want to continue in the future. So therefore, they're not built into the budget, because that would, as you say, be raising money from the taxpayers that would hopefully is not necessary. And so we wouldn't do that on a whim. We're going to do that when and if we have to.
Okay. Jessica.
Just on the mention of the building reserve fund or building fund, what does that actually fund?
So any sort of building and grounds projects that are needed. So if we need a new roof, we need a new boiler, we're replacing floors, we need to put in a new septic system. I'm like listing out all the things that we've done in the past few years.
So that would apply to all the like still open schools.
Correct.
In our district.
Correct.
And you're saying that's not been included?
It hasn't been included this year. We have a sizable reserve built up right now
for that.
And yes,
well, that still would apply to the schools that are staying open.
Correct.
Like Bloodbrooks and everything.
Yes.
It wouldn't roll that into the bond. Okay.
No. Once that money is set aside by the taxpayers and reserved for that purpose, it can only be spent on that purpose.
Okay.
Unless the taxpayers authorize moving money from that fund for another purpose.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Rogan, go ahead.
Back to the buses. Are we budgeting more for the near future for the busing? And are we willing to spend more on EV buses specifically for the Valley now that we're doing more busing in the Valley?
I don't want to speak 100% for our director of transportation, but I can tell you that it is challenging for them, from what they've shared, to run the EV buses. And I think that running them up the mountain is not really something that works well for them. And those buses are $500,000. So the savings over time for having those buses, they are not at all convinced that it warrants spending that kind of money on a bus. You know, if you're just talking about money, dollars, how much we're going to spend, and the reliability in our cold winters, I'm not so sure they would be interested in purchasing EVs themselves. We have certainly not built in the cost for purchasing EV buses.
We do have some, correct?
We have 4, but we got them through a federal rebate grant
Okay.
that we were
Okay.
awarded.
I was specifically asking about the valley because I know we have an EV and we go over a terrible mountain every day, and it's like I don't even know if it's worth it because it just drains it.
Yeah.
But specifically now adding Sunderland and Courier, I thought maybe that's something that we should look into. But yeah, 500,000 versus 120,
135. Yeah, it's a big difference.
Okay.
But I think
Thank you.
Rogan, I'll comment because I think you're raising a really good point, is that I think if we think really strategically, then we take the 4 EV buses we've got and we use them in the most cost-effective way that we can. And and that would be my expectation, for how we operate. And it may make sense to run some of those valley runs that are longer down here. And I think, we always, every year, we put money into that bus reserve. This is for sure, as Sue said, an area where we're seeing really a really significant increase in costs. And so I think the short or long-term question is a really good one. Right now, we know that we're forecasting that we're going to need more money than if we just put in the same amount we've been putting in. We won't have enough to cover the costs. I don't see any indications right now that say that the prices are going to come down. So this may be that we are looking at a increased request to put money into that account in years to come as well. But we try to adjust the recommendation based on our current needs and as well as costs. So, but they've gone up a huge amount in the last decade. I guess probably all vehicles have, but it's a lot of money.
Thank you. John?
Sue, the property yield number, I know you've said this before. Where did you get the FY27 projection from?
That's right off the yield letter, John.
And that yield letter was sent
December 1st. I think there's a link to it. I want to say,
Okay.
Did I put a link to it on the tax rate page?
Now, if the
No, I didn't add that. Oh, it's probably in the frequently asked questions link. Yeah.
a couple weeks after that, the governor said that considering applying $75 million of surplus funds to blunt the impact of property tax increases. So would that be essentially we'd see a revised yield, correct? Would that?
Yeah. Odds are, based on past history, that we're not going to know whether or not we have a revised yield that we can reliably work with prior to going to the public with the tax rate, right? So we're going to be putting out our booklet in a month. And we have done this in the past when they come back to us and they say, no, we're revising the yield. This is what we really feel it's going to be. If joint fiscal comes out with a different number, which they have done based on getting all of our budgets, right? So the next step is once you guys vote, we submit all our budgets to the state, and then the state really has that ed spending figure. Then they really know what's going on. As opposed to when they put out that December 1 letter, they're basing it on coming out to the field and saying, hey, what do you guys think you're going to have for ed spending? And they're asking me that number for that number before I even have a budget to show you guys. So we don't even provide an estimate because there's no way for me to know what your ed spending is going to be. So the information that they have that they're working with is not complete because it's too early. And the state knows that this is not a great system. But if joint fiscal comes back once they have this information in the next 2-3 weeks and they say, look, the yield definitely is going up and we're going to give you this new number, then we'll present both numbers in our information to the taxpayer so that they can see that. And we've done that in the past.
And I think we've discussed this in the past, the possibility, let's say if we plan for multiple eventualities and say, we want to spend part of our tax stabilization, a good portion of it now. But if after the vote, we could be upfront to voters after the vote in March, we find that the yield significantly changes, then can we adjust our tax stabilization spending after that vote in March?
Two things. As long as the state has not required us to submit our ed spending number early, which they haven't asked us for that number that early. And the second thing is your comfort level in publishing documentation and then making a change to it. Obviously, the change is
It
going to
wouldn't
be.
change the spending, though, correct?
It's not going to change what the voters vote on, but it is going to change what you presented to them with respect to how much of a tax stabilization reserve you intend to use, and what that tax rate might look like. So it's nothing that they have. You're not changing anything that they vote on, because they're just voting on the budget. They're voting on that. That's the one number that they're going to approve, right? And we could actually even be clear with them in our FAQs and say that our intention is to keep the tax rate stable with a 3 cent increase, and so therefore our use of tax stabilization will be adjusted based on the yield and the
Yeah, that's
information
what
we
I'm
have in the
getting
yield.
at. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. But that could be that, that might, if you go that route, could provide more clarity, saying this is going to be, no matter what, this is going to be the tax rate change, and the stabilization spending, that's going to be flexible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that's
I
a
don't know what
revenue.
the rest of the board thinks of that.
I'm going to jump in and say I still think that's tricky no matter what, because we have that CLA is so variable that because the CLA changes, even when we're changing our tax rate and we're changing our, we say what the increase is, whether it's 3.4, 4.9 or whatever, that does not translate to what actual tax rates are, because everyone's tax rate changes there. So I don't know if it is, I just don't know how we want to manage that in a way that we think is actually helpful to the public.
But the relative increase, I'm sorry, I'm jumping in, the relative increase will be nearly the same.
Right. Jeff, you've had your hand up, and let everybody do their second round.
Second round, here we go. Talking about reserve funds, I don't know what's going to happen in the next year, 2, 3, 4, 10, when it comes to whole reorganization, redistricting on a statewide basis. I don't think anybody does at this point in time. This is going to be quite a legislative year. But let's assume for a second, though, that there is some mega district formed, and we're subsumed by that mega district. What happens to the reserve funds that we have? We have $8.5 million in reserve funds right now. Mm-hmm. Does that something I assume the new district would assume and obtain? And how does that work with if there's a new funding system too? I guess they can just continue to use those reserve funds in some way like we have in the past. I don't know, though, because it's going to be a different animal.
I mean, when we did it with TNG, it was pretty cut and dry. We asked the voters to create funds, and we transferred the funds that already existed for the same purpose into the new funds that the voters of the new district created. And we even established some rules around different districts' funds, where one district wanted to spend their money on their school, right? Versus other districts that were like, no, just throw it in the pot. And we tracked that until that money was spent on the appropriate school that was within the district where those original funds came from. So I can't imagine it wouldn't be something like that, but it would take all that coordination of whoever's in charge of the new district.
Well, I'm not sure they're going to be asking us what we want to do, essentially, but I may be wrong on that.
Well, there'd have to be some sort of
if there's a top-down mandate that we become part of a mega district, we might lose any and all influence as to where those funds go.
They would have to put some sort of caveat in that top-down direction, because the voters are the ones who set this money aside. They can't pull that money from the voters and say, dump it into a general fund of the new district.
Well, they can do anything they want if they write a law.
Well, I suppose, but I would hope, Jeff, they would.
But anyway, it's just a concern. Obviously, our taxpayers the administration, taxpayer, and the board over the years have essentially been fairly frugal and conservative from a fiscal point of view in trying to maintain a handle on these funds and use them judiciously, which I think makes a lot of sense. But I'm just concerned if things evolve that we may lose our capacity to say where those funds go, and our taxpayers essentially lose out in some degree too.
So can I add one thing to that?
You certainly got it too.
I think that we've had this question before at another district. And I think that what our take on this is that hopefully we will have enough time from the legislature knowing what their new plan is going to be for new mergers or changes in the funding formula and how that might impact our reserves to do what we want to do with it in order to make sure it goes to our taxpayers. So even if that meant saying to the taxpayers, this year, vote to move all that money from the reserve fund into tax stabilization, and then we're going to use all the tax stabilization to reduce your tax rate the following year, so our voters get all that money back.
Mm-hmm.
It's good for the state. The state gets a reduction in ed spending, and our voters get, a 1 or 2 or 3 year potential tax rate reduction before they're dumped into a new district, and then those funds stay with us, and they don't go to this new district.
Gotcha. I'm sure we'll have a lot of discussions like that if things start to change.
Yeah.
Since I have the floor, so to speak, I do have an amendment that I'm going to offer on the budget, and I sent it out to everybody just a little while ago. I sent it to Mel and Randy and Dick beforehand, and Sue. But just a suggestion from a process point of view. I mean, it's up to you, Mel, obviously, but you might want to just get a motion to approve the budget, and then I would make a motion to amend, and then we can discuss and go from there.
Yeah, I think that's a fine idea. I guess before we go there, because I think we'll jump right into your question, I'd rather get whatever more questions we have out on the table first. And then that way we can focus specifically on the amendment. Jim, it looks like your hand is up. Nope. All right, Dick, your hand is up.
I was unaware of this motion, so I'm just
I want to go back to an issue that we discussed last year, and we're supposed to get a legal opinion with respect to the fact that in the past, we've had 2 separate articles. The first article has been our budget, and the second article, as of last year, was the approval of the requested budget by BB&A. We asked the question last year, legally, if our budget were to fail, but the BBA budget were to succeed, there's no way that we can modify our budget to reflect the substantial increase of the BBA budget. That was the conclusion last year, so we dropped it. But it is important that we have some guidance with respect to the priorities here, with respect to how we're funding the BBA tuition increase, which is now included in our budget, but it's separately warned. So
It's always been included in our budget, though, yes, Dick?
So if the BBA warned article passes, but our budget fails, then effectively the conclusion last year was that our students lose as we revised the budget to try and get it passed.
I mean, yeah.
I don't know what the law is.
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead, Randy.
It's, that is the milieu that we operate in right now, is that you as a board agree to pay more than the average town rate that is allowed, and but the voters have to vote to do that. So you put that warrant article because you're essentially saying, all right, residents, voters of Taconic and Green, you only need to spend X dollars. We're asking you to spend Y dollars for kids to attend independent schools in Vermont. the voters say, yeah, fine, that's fine. So, I think the question that, you could argue is really the voters are allowing you to pay up to that amount, right? Because that's what they're voting on. Whether you went back to BBA and BBA was willing to take less money, the voters have said we would authorize, X amount of dollars, but BBA recognizes that our budget didn't pass. I don't know. I mean, my hope is that we don't find ourselves in that position. We can't change the warning language on our budget. That's dictated by statute. There's nothing in statute that talks about the language in the BBA article. So, the question we had talked about was, we looked and explored the idea of contingency. I wanted to put in there, you vote whatever, $24,000 contingent on the passing of the general budget, but we can't do that. You can't make one article contingent on another one. So this is where we are.
And Randy, you
Randy.
listened to last year also changing, I think you wanted to add language into Article 11 on page 29, which is, the approval of BBA. Didn't you want to even add like what the rate increase was or something, and you couldn't do that either because it was really set in stone?
No, we couldn't do that in the general budget.
Got it. Okay. Could
That was the question I was going to ask, was whether we because if Article 10 says our increase is 4.3 and Article 11 says BBA's increase is 4.9, I would think that would increase the likelihood that ours would, for the voters, I would think at least that makes it clear that where they, that they're less like, anyway, I just think that would be a helpful piece of information. If we have to include it in 10, we should include it in 11.
Yeah, so the statute of the language requirement is in 10, but there's not that I'm aware of any statutory requirement for how the language is in 11. So yeah, I don't know that we couldn't, and I'm happy that you guys need to vote on the warning language. But I could see if I can get an opinion during this meeting about whether we can add that percentage increase to the BBA rate.
Is it possible to vote to include that and then you find out legally we cannot and then we just don't?
Not if you voted on that for the warning.
Okay. It would still be wrong. Can I ask one more question actually about that too? Or I just guess I should point out to the board especially for kind of the folks who are a little bit new to this. We, in that warning, it's clear that we pay the BBA rate for resident pupils 9 through 12 who attend eligible Vermont independent schools. I think we added that only a few years ago. I think we used to say that it was BBA and Long Trail only. Now we do all eligible Vermont schools. It's not a huge number if we change that, but if there were some budgetary concerns, I don't know if that's something we're thinking about. It would mean, we're kind of being exclusionary in that we pay all other Vermont schools the average and not the BBA rate, but it's just worth considering if we're looking.
What we have done in the past, and I think we need to be reminded, is we've approached the headmasters because we've had the regular headmasters meetings, and we've brought this issue to them that if they are often promoting passing their own budget and encouraging their voters to pass it without mentioning us, and maybe we should remind them again this year that as we did last year, that you need to include both budgets need to be passed or we have a serious problem. So maybe, it's not the same as being able to put it in law and have it be binding, but it is a step we can take.
Yeah, I don't disagree. 'Cause,
Mel, can you share what you said again? I'm sorry about the tuition.
Who, me?
Yeah.
That the article right now says that we will pay the $23,050, which is the BBA rate. I'll just read it to you. I'm sorry. So the voters approve payment of the announced tuition rate of Burton Academy in the amount of $23,050 for the 26-27 school year for resident pupils in grades 9 through 12 who attend any eligible Vermont independent school. So
Mel, I'm not sure. Randy, that's either in the articles for TNG or it's in policy? It was a decision made when TNG formed, but I don't remember who made the decision.
It's a TNG policy to pay all independent schools that rate. All Vermont independent schools. Your board established policy that said you wanted to do that.
Okay. Thank you. I forgot it was actual policy and not just practice. Emma, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I have two really quick questions. The first one is, what happens if our budget doesn't pass, like the voters shoot it down? And then the other one is just, sorry to ask you to clarify again, but we pay all independent schools in the area $23,000, or we pay the students to go to the independent schools?
We pay the individual schools where the students are enrolled. If it's a Vermont independent school and the voters approve this BBA rate, we pay them all that $23,050 for each individual student enrolled at a eligible Vermont independent school.
Okay, thank you.
And then if the budget fails, we will go back to vote. We will reconvene and discuss whether we want to make changes to the budget, or we will try to determine why the voters didn't pass the budget. What are the concerns? You guys will vote again on a new budget and we go back to the voters. And that would typically happen in May.
Okay, thank you.
It looks like most of the questions are kind of wrapping up. If we want to go ahead and make a motion to approve the budget, and then we can add Jeff's warning to it.
I move the adoption of the budget as published.
Okay.
I'll second.
Great, Jim. Further discussion, I guess. Jeff, do you want to go ahead and read an offered amendment?
Yeah, that'd be great. I move to amend the motion in a manner so that the proposed FY27 sum for education spending be reduced to a total of $38,214,908 by transferring $257,485 from the Tax Stability Reserve Fund to the FY27 local revenues. And furthermore, that the board direct that all FY26 year-end surplus revenues be used to replenish the tax stabilization fund. And that's the end of it.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff, will you read me the new ed spending number just so I make sure I have the exact number that you read?
Yeah, you should. I emailed it to you, but I'll read it. Yeah. $38,214,908.
Thank you.
It's a reduction by the penny amount.
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure my math on the sheet was exactly what was in the article or the amendment.
Right. So if I could I speak to the motion, Madam Chair?
Yeah, Jim, do you approve the amendment or as a seconder?
I don't have the seconder. Didn't he just seconded it? Didn't he?
Dick seconded it, didn't he?
Okay, I'm sorry, I missed it then.
Dick second. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I think the budget, as I indicated before in our last meeting, I think it's done the administration has done a fabulous job. I just think there's an ability to reduce the tax rate by 1 more cent. I think it would demonstrate to the public that we're trying our darndest to try to do all that we can do to minimize the taxes. If you're looking at the actual projected taxes, even though, again, we've done a great job when it comes to if you're looking just at the equalized tax rate, once you bring the common level of appraisal into the equation, it really works against us in many respects. And you're looking at substantial tax rate increases in many of the communities. Peru, for instance, is projected to go up 14.6%. Danby, 10.7%. A couple 8.4 in Londonderry, 8.4 in Manchester. I just think if we could just take it down a little bit to try to address some of this, what I would consider somewhat of an onerous increase in many of the towns, I think it would be extraordinarily helpful. One of the issues I think we have in this economy, and it's a tale of two cities. We have a lot of folks who are doing extremely well, going on vacation, buying all sorts of stuff. And then we have other folks who are having a real struggle of it and really facing an affordability crisis. So what I'm simply trying to do is just pull it down a little bit. I think it's a rational, reasonable approach. I would see us replenishing with what we take out, hopefully most of it, if not all of it, with the year-end FY26 surplus that I'm sure Sue will pull together for us, and probably more, I bet. And I'm sensitive to the federal funds issue, but we don't know where that's going at all. Anything could happen, as we've noticed in the past few weeks in the federal government, and it's potential that there may be some reduction. But even if that happens, we have $8.6 million in reserve. And if indeed the federal government pulls the plug on all of that $800 and some thousand, we would have some time hopefully over the next fiscal year to call a special town meeting and then transfer some monies from conceivably the reserve fund for building and maintenance or whatever we choose to plug the hole as far as that spending gap would go. And as long as we get town meeting approval to make that transition from, say, the building fund, I'm only suggesting that because it has a fairly healthy surplus or balance at this time. But if we do get town meeting approval, that is legal and A-OK as far as I know. So again, I'm just trying to do a little bit. It would reduce the equalized tax rate by another cent. So it'd be a 1.9 cent increase, a 1.3% increase. And it would pull down our education spending number as well. I think it's 3.8%. I think it's at 4.5 now. I think it'll pull it down to 3.8, which sounds better to me anyway. So that's sort of my thought process behind just trying to do this. And I think it's reasonable, but again, others may disagree. So we'll see where the chips fall. Thank you.
Thank you. Rogan, it looks like you have your hand up first, and then Jim.
Yeah. As you started to talk, I loved it. I love the idea. I just know from my high school and college experiences how important endowment is. And that ultimately seems like what our reserve is endowment. It is our stash that we need so badly. And the Fed is a giant threat right now. I love buying public appreciation, but risky for 1 cent, 1%. I think the public perception of what their tax rate is going to be this year is going to be bad regardless of whatever we do, if it's the smallest percent. But I'm not entirely opposed. I like the idea. Like I said, as I started listening to you, I was loving it. And then I just thought about, so I went to a prep school in New Hampshire. Their endowment is so important that they will not stop sending me stuff, letters, emails saying, you got to give, we need to keep building this up. So it just makes me a little nervous. That's all.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, I'm not averse to the idea, but just kind of taking a look, essentially, depending on a tax rate, you had expressed concern about some towns having big increases. But this really, it doesn't put much of a dent in it. I just pulled one, Mount Tabor, and did a quick calculation and think that, they're looking at a 13.4% increase, that your suggestion would bring it down to 12.7%. So it really, it's the old, a few years back when we took $1 million, which was, more like 4 cents off the tax rate because of the circumstances that you could really feel. But I think the, penny off the tax rate isn't really going to move the needle much. So I'm not averse to it, but at the same time, I think, like Rogan, I get comfort from the surplus funds we have. We have pretty good tax stabilization and building and grounds funds right now, so we're in a good place. But I'm not sure I think the budget was put together pretty well. Changing it by a penny isn't really going to change the tax rates much. So I kind of question why we'd divert at this point.
John?
Sue, are these reserve funds, are they, I can't remember if they're sitting in a bank account, CD, mutual fund?
They're in the money market.
Okay, so, a few percent a year they're growing?
Yeah, 2 point something.
Okay, yeah, so I think, I see your point, Rogan, about the endowment, but endowments, grow substantially.
Yeah.
This is not really doing much for anything. I'm in favor of the idea of buying down our tax rate, just even if it's a cent. It's I think, especially being in Manchester, being middle class myself in Manchester, and trying to own a home, feeling like middle class is getting squeezed out, and property taxes aren't helping that.
Thank you, John. Lindsay?
So I'm going both ways, because I was really a proponent for when we did this last time. But the problem I feel, I understand Jeff's point of wanting to give the perception to the public that we're trying. I just don't think the public even understands how any of this works. So when you try to explain to them that we're doing this to help, they don't understand the tax rate, so to speak. A lot of people I talk to, they see our budget and they think our budget is what causes them to have the 12% increase in their property taxes. So that's the one. I think it's the getting the public to understand, and getting it out there. And I'm just concerned that for a penny, the effort it's going to take, do we have enough that we could increase it? So maybe it's a little bit more off the tax rate. I don't know. I think getting it out there and explaining it to people, that's going to be the difficult thing.
Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah, I would have gone more if the administration, Sue and Randy, didn't already eliminate the $350,000 for the annual appropriation for the building reserve fund. So from some respects, from the last budget to, well, not some respects, but from the last budget to this budget draft, it has reduced the tax rate to some degree. Correct, Sue? Do I have that right?
No, I think we add spending overall because of the BBA rate, our small increases. We were looking at a couple of $100,000. So the difference and then the only other difference that we received was the final state adjustment, which went up a smidge. So that helps.
So where did it net out?
The 7033 instead
No,
of.
I mean, as
instead-
far as the last budget you presented versus this
the
one.
tax rate. Let me see.
It's the same, isn't it? Or
It was the last draft. It was 1.4669, and this draft it's 1.4601. The difference being the education spending is down less than $100,000, but that state adjustment also increased our. Well, it didn't really increase it that much. Oh, the big change in from tax rate to tax rate is really the count. We have our final count estimate, our LTW count.
Yeah.
That's the biggest change that is impacting that reduction. The actual ed spending number, when we take into consideration the change in appropriations for reserve and then the small increase to the voted budget, we're only looking at less than $100,000 change to ed spending.
okay.
Well, I see you have your hand up. Do you want to comment?
Did you call on me, Mel?
Yes.
I couldn't hear what.
I'm sorry, Ben,
thanks. Sorry, no, it just broke up right as you were speaking. I guess I'm sort of mixed on this. I don't. It just feels like the big boogeyman in the picture is what's going on in the state level. I mean, you take, if we were to bring our budget down to 0% increase, you'd still see the numbers for, I don't know if this is exactly how it works, but you look at those percentage increase based on the CLA and what's going on at the state level of the ed fund that we have to pay for. We're still, I mean, our overall district wide increase is 9% right now, average. Obviously we got some big fluctuations, but if we were to drop that down by 2 percentage points, we're still talking about a 7% tax increase with a zero budget. I mean, so I don't, to me, it's like, we can take a penny off, but I don't know if we're really helping. I mean, like on the one level, yes, every cent matters, every dollar matters to the taxpayers. So I can understand that, but it's hard to get behind, as Rogan was saying, sort of stripping away our reserves and our rainy day fund when where it's a small change compared to what's going on at the state level that we have no control over. So I guess I'm not really coming down hard on either side of it. It's just like, it's that state picture. I think we've got to do a really good job of communicating that to our voters to say, look, if we did nothing, if we held a flat zero budget for this next year, your taxes are still going to go up as a district on average of 7%, and in some cases by 16%. And like, there's nothing we can do. So.
Thank you, Ben. Jeff, I'm going to let you kind of make your final closing argument, I guess. I'm hearing a lot of the same conversation and thoughts. So you're muted at the moment, Jeff. But then I'm going to go ahead and call for a vote.
How many minutes do I have?
Go for it. What?
Never mind. I said, how many minutes do I have? 30?
Not many.
Yeah, I know. If everything goes right, we won't be depleting our reserves, because we'll be replenishing them with that wonderful surplus that Sue's going to manage the rest of this budget and come in with a big surplus for in the FY26. Again, it's minimal. It's a gesture. It's I think a positive gesture, just to demonstrate to the taxpayers out there, many of which are hurting, many of which aren't, but a lot are, that we're just trying to do everything we can. The big boogeyman is not Taconic and Green. It's, pick one: federal government, state government. It's not us, darn it. So I'm just trying to do a little bit here, and I think it's either way it goes. I think we've done a good job, but I'd like to pull it down a few bucks, because I think every few bucks helps with some of these folks, and I'd just like to see it pass if possible. But if not, c'est la vie. Thank you.
Yep. Jim, you want to go quick and then
Just a
yeah.
just a last quick. I think what we're really doing for our residents is we're once again, again, we have been having increases in our budgets way below the state average level year after year. This year, they're projecting a 6.5% increase at the state level or something like that. Once again, we're coming in below that, even with the fact that, BBA is up by 4.9%. Our overall budget increase is less than that. That's what we're doing for the, that's what we need to point to as, that's what we're doing, which still doesn't help their tax rates because that's overall school spending around the state. But, that's what we're doing. And I just think an extra penny is just, as you said, every penny counts, but at the same time, it's sort of just a rounding error.
Okay, John.
I sent out that those estimates from the JFO, Joint Fiscal Office, and looking at comparing the average homestead property tax rate in FY 2026, 1.593, FY 27 projected is 1.67. So that's an increase of 4.83%. So I think a lot of our districts projected homestead tax rate is less than the average, which is good, and we should communicate that. I would like to see us keep our get our average increase in those districts, closer to that state increase, that 4.83%. And if a penny gets us a little bit closer, that's great. I just think blunt the shock to the system a little bit.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and call for a vote. I'm going to ask you guys, because this looks like we're going to have to count, just hold your hand up for a minute while I do it so I can make sure I'm tallying properly. So all
Mel,
yeah,
it's got to be a roll call, by the way.
Okay.
Well, it doesn't have to be. No, you can take a voice vote, but if it's not unanimous, it has to be a roll call. That's state law now.
As in that I need to not just write it by person, but I need to speak it out loud.
Yeah, we'd have to call the roll basically as a roll call. But I'm saying if it's not unanimous, the state law says.
Well, let's find out if it's unanimous. I guess the first motion is to approve the amendment to the approval of the agenda. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Let's see. I'm going to go ahead and I see Jeff. Please keep your hands up. I see Jeff. Wilson is saying aye. Dick Dale is an aye. Rogan is an aye. Where are you on my sheet? Alex is an aye. Ben Freeman, I see, is an aye. And Kelsey is an aye. John, aye. Jessica, aye. David Chandler, I do not have seen vote on this. Ron is not here. No. Jim, Lindsay, no. Okay, so that would be for the ayes. And if anyone opposed, please raise your hand. I will record you as opposed. Jim Salzgiver is a no. Lindsay is a no. What else do I have? David Chandler is a no. And that is it other than me, but I don't think this is a tie. Let me just double check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And it looks like everyone's voted, so there's nobody opposed. So I have 8 in favor, and I have 1, 2, 3 opposed. So it looks like the motion passes, and the amendment will be added to the final approval of the budget. Let's go ahead and vote now on the budget. And all in favor of approving the budget, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Looking at an unanimous vote. Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so it looks like the budget has been approved as amended. And unanimously approved. Okay, thank you, folks. Does that seem like I did that right? I didn't mess that up. This isn't going to throw anything off, right? Okay. Let's see, where are we at? Boom, boom, boom. Budget. Final approval of the warning. Have you all seen the warning in the agenda? I don't think there's anything different than what we normally put in our warnings, and a lot of this is by statute. Randy, do you want to speak to anything changed?
I do. Per our earlier conversation regarding Articles 10 and 11, I did get an opinion from our attorney, and there's nothing that prevents us from adding to Article 11 the percentage increase. So my recommendation is to adjust the language in that article to read, shall the voters approve payment of the announced tuition rate of Burton Academy in the amount of $23,050 for the 2026 to 2027 school year, which is a 4.9%, which is 4.9% higher than the tuition rate for the current year, comma, for the resident pupils in grades 9 through 12 who attend any eligible Vermont independent school.
I move the acceptance of that language that you just read for Article 11.
I'll second.
Okay. It occurs to me that we can't actually approve this without also amending Article 10 now that we are now taking a penny off of the
Correct.
budget.
True, but I was addressing the Article 11. Now we have to go back and restate Article 10 with the correct numbers.
Right, but you're saying that you'd like to approve
Actually-
that addition, but we need to do the whole thing, yeah? No?
Yeah, eventually, but we're going to make two revisions, I believe.
Okay,
The first is to include the percentage increase in Article 11, and the second is to correct the final number in Article 10.
so,
To
help
agree
me
with what we just
be sure. Should we be taking a vote for that full revision as if it's an amendment first? We don't have a motion on the table yet officially for the final warning.
I'm seeking to amend the language that was presented. And if that amendment passes, then the next article will be the correct number to be added to number 10. These
Actually,
are all
I'm not
editing situations.
sure the 41 million changes. That's expenditures.
The 41 million doesn't change. The 13,222 and the 4.3% will change because those are based
Right.
on ed spending numbers. But I don't, Randy, do we need a motion on every article that's going to change, or can we just read the articles as we will revise them for your signature, and then you guys can vote on what we read? Because we're going to have two more articles that we have to add.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I don't think we need to run through every single one of them. We just want to make sure that you know what the changes are that you will be voting on. So Sue, do you want to run through the numbers where I don't think there's any changes?
So Article 10 is what's going to change, and it's that last sentence. The Taconic and Green Regional School District estimates that this proposed budget, if approved, will result in per pupil education spending of $13,133, which is 3.56% higher than per pupil education spending for the current year. Okay. We will have to add two more articles based on what you guys voted. And that will be, I don't have language right in front of me. Shall the voters, give me 1 second. Let me open up the exact language because I have it on another warning.
Sue, while you look that up, I'm feeling like we're not quite doing it quite cleanly but I just want to clarify again. Dick and Jim, you guys first and seconded the finalization of the approved warning. Yes. And then we're just going through what will be changed, right? You
Can accept a friendly amendment. We can accept
Yeah.
a friendly amendment. So the language needs to be edited given what we've done previously. And we're
Okay.
currently involved in the business of editing the language so that the warning is what we're actually voting on.
Great. Okay. So I had you written down as making a motion to amend, and I am just putting you down as a first and second for the final approval, and we're just editing.
As with the appropriate edits that we're currently discussing.
Thank you for saying that. Okay.
Okay, are you guys ready for me to read the next article?
Yep.
So shall the voters authorize the school board to transfer any unassigned general fund surplus existing on June 30th, 2026, an amount estimated to be $231,786 to the tax stabilization reserve fund?
Which article is that?
That is going to end up being, it will slide into, or it'll be like Article 12. It'll be, and Article 12 will be 13 and so on.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, we don't need two, just the one.
So the changes
The voters don't need to approve the tax stabilization use?
No, you can transfer the fund into use for the budget as you see fit. And we will share that with them when we publicize the budget. So you guys have decided on that 257 and that's what I'll transfer.
Is everybody crystal clear on what the motion is and what we've changed? I got a thumbs up from Ben. Everybody seems to be smiling and nobody raising their hand. Thank you, Alex. Any further discussion? Okay. Let's go ahead and take a vote on finalizing the approved warning with the changes. All in favor, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Thanks. Kelsey, thank you. Okay. Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? It looks like that also passes unanimously. Thank you, folks. And thank you, Sue and Randy, and everyone in your office who put all this together. I know it's going to work, and we all greatly appreciate it.
Yep.
And don't want to do it. So thank you. Let's see. I have tuition rates to approve next. Is that right?
Yeah.
I'm kind of going through what I printed out earlier and then what we got today. I didn't get to reprint that. So approved tuition rates.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the tuition rate as recommended at 21,000.
Okay. Who's seconding that? Dick Dale, I see your hand raised. Is that you?
Yeah.
Second, great. Discussion, please. Dick, your hand is up. No. John.
Yeah, what was it last year? I'm sorry, I couldn't find that. It's probably somewhere obvious.
We typically share that with you. I apologize. It's 19.8 this year. That is on one of your, the very end of the budget. You can see that on packet page 24. But I should have had it right on that worksheet for you, John. I apologize.
Okay. So
And
19.
it is a large increase, and it is due to declining enrollment.
Okay. And will that? Okay. So this is most of our tuition students. What percentage of our tuition students are paying out of pocket? Would we say, or
Nobody.
Any of them?
No, we don't accept.
No out of pocket. I'm sorry. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So a higher increase will not really translate to fewer kids.
No, these are all kids who are coming from non-operating districts where they have choice.
Okay.
Sue, can you help me understand where we get from total costs at 17,309 to projected expenditures of 21?
If you look over on the left underneath that 17,309, you can see our projected enrollment. So it's a division. It's just taking the numbers that by statute are allowed to be included in announced tuition, and dividing it by what we project to be our enrollment. And that's where we're getting that figure from. And I usually round it just because it's easier for billing purposes.
Okay. Oh, and I'm looking at 17. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I knew there was something I was missing and looking at wrong. Any other questions?
Does this need to be explained in the fact-based questions that you're now going to turn your attention to?
We don't typically spend a lot of time on announced tuition. It's not. It doesn't impact anything that our taxpayers voting on our budget are really concerned about, outside of perhaps, how much does it cost us to educate a kid, right?
But it confirms, I believe, it confirms that our enrollment is in fact declining.
Yeah, and there are more than one charts, graphs, and FAQs on our enrollment. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Kelsey.
Sue, just a quick question. Is the estimated kindergarten, like, how do we get the number 81?
Yeah. So I just have a sort of little mathematical formula that I do. I just take an average of our current K1 and 2. And it has come in pretty close. There's just really no way for us to know exactly what that's going to be. Obviously, we can know perhaps how many 4-year-olds exist in our system right now that we expect to go to kindergarten, but we don't know how many of them are moving out or how many new kids will be moving in. And so I find just taking an average of those last 3 grades that are closest is sort of the best way to go.
Randy, when we get the information from BBA, are we getting reports like this also of the breakdown? Just curious.
The breakdown of what specifically?
The cost per pupil, total costs, expected expenditures per pupil.
Yeah, so that is a great question. Hold on, I'm looking for an email. So we don't typically get that information. When I received the email from Mark regarding the increase of tuition, he talked to me about kind of some of the rationale for the increase. And so, but the way he said it made me a little bit curious. So I asked him, because he was saying that the increase, our per pupil cost to taxpayers remains well below the actual cost of educating each student. So I was curious about what that actually is. So I asked, I am curious about what the actual cost is. And I wasn't sure actually if the rate they gave us was the private tuition or the sending town rate. So I wanted clarification, make sure we included the correct number in the budget. I said, I appreciate that what you're asking or what you're requesting from taxpayers is less than the actual cost, but it would be helpful to know what that difference is. I also didn't know if the tuition rate is different than what they charge for private pay families. I just had a lot of questions because I didn't really understand how it all worked. So today I got a response which didn't really provide me with the answers to the questions I was asking. He talked about how much they raise in the annual fund. They're raising about 1.2 million in the annual fund each year. We draw a little more than $1 million in endowment draw per year. With the international program, private pay students and other supplemental revenues, we generate an additional 2 million. And then he said this adds up to over 4 million above and beyond tuition, but he's talking about generating versus expenditures. So it didn't really make a lot of sense. Then he talked to me about all the investments over the last few years. Yeah, so I didn't really get an answer.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry to bring it up, and I know it's late. I from.
That's okay. I just got that today because I was curious. I wanted to be able to give you information. I just wasn't able to get the answer.
Yeah. I mean, because if our per pupil spending is going up because our numbers are decreasing, I don't believe BBA's numbers are decreasing.
But if you look at our enrollment at BBA, T&G's enrollment is decreasing.
Okay.
He's saying there's steady enrollment there, right? Our numbers are going down. So they must be.
But they have a mix.
If their enrollment is steady, what?
Their mix is a big factor on if they have additional international students.
Right.
That's at a dramatically different level. If they have not from the rates, all their rates are published on their website. And so there's the sending town rate. There's a higher rate, and that differential has grown a little bit with non-sending towns. And then they also have they announce the tuition rates for international, etc., which are dramatically different.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I was just kind of looking for rationales when if we need to go to the voters and explain why that's going up and ours is going up, ours is not going up by quite as much.
I saw Mark's response, and my suggestion would be there's no way for us to figure that out from Mark's response.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But I did try to get that to share with you in case that question arose.
Cool. All right. Thank you. Any further discussion on that? Otherwise, I will call for a vote. Okay. Anyone in favor of approving the tuition rate for the Taconic Green, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand. 2, 3, 4. Anyone opposed or abstaining? Okay. Again, it passes unanimously. Thank you for that. Next is just a distribution from the superintendent. You had an update today, Randy, is that right?
Yesterday I sent an update, and then I think updated it in here today. Yeah, so I sort of, if you look at E, F, and G, they are all a little bit combined. So I do want to discuss specifically with you, just, I wanted to give you the opportunity as a board to share any thoughts or ideas you have around prior to us really beginning the renaming process. I just wanted to give you the opportunity to share any thoughts. And then you had asked specifically about kind of reconfiguration update information. So I included that in the superintendent report. I wanted to give you the opportunity to talk about those two a little bit separately. So I feel like I would like for you, if there's anything, there's really not a lot else in here, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about what's here outside of those two specific topics that we pulled out for discussion. Kelsey?
Kelsey, go ahead.
On the superintendent report, when the update about teacher and staff assignments, there's a line about 5 people being placed in an assignment that was not their first choice or preferred choice. I'm really concerned that we're going to lose those 5 people because of if most of the district got placed where they want and you have 5 people that are not even on a choice. I mean, I know there's a process. I just want to voice that I'm concerned we're going to lose some really great staff. That's all I got.
Okay. Thank you. Richard, Dick.
I wanted to find out if there are parameters with respect to the renaming of schools, other than Floodbrook, which by consensus was the view when it was unified a few years before the Taconic and Green. Are we naming it after individuals? Are we naming it after regions? are there parameters as various constituencies consider the renaming of the Valley schools?
So do we want to switch to that? Or I see Rogan's got his hand up, so
Yeah, go ahead, Rogan.
it's up to you. We can
Yeah, if we're
transition to that.
switching to that, sure. I was just gonna say, you know what? I know Joanne Prouty really well. Like that, it couldn't have worked out better for Floodbrook. I think involving the community and especially the students in this situation. I don't know. Maybe I missed some emails, and this is what's going on anyway. It's been a pretty busy couple of weeks for me. Um, it's fantastic. Like we love the people up here. I think love the name Floodbrook and what it represents. I did briefly scan the email that said something involving the valley and the mountain. I think if you give some parameters to the children to create it, it could be a really fun experience. That's all.
Yeah, let's try to, I think that's a good idea, Randy, too. Let's keep it directive. Any feedback, considerations on renaming schools, that is helpful. Let's stick to that, and then we'll move on to other parts of the superintendent report.
Well, this is, sorry, I just want to clarify. This is the next agenda item, is this specific topic. So
Right.
and there's not much else in there. So if people
Okay.
are ready to move on, I'm fine with that. I just want to make sure that we, I was just trying to organize it for the sake of the conversation, but.
So can I'm going to add to that organization, Randy. Last month, we asked you to include these school reconfiguration updates, and for the purposes of just addressing this monthly update from the superintendent, I think it'd be helpful maybe for you to get feedback. Does this format work for the board as far as getting updates rather than being completely different reports? I know that kind of came up before. Just putting together timelines, is this kind of like in line with what we're hoping to get to help us be able to respond to public when we're asked questions in the grocery store? Is the way I look at it. I'm getting it good from Jim. Is there any other feedback specifically on the report or another format that we might ask Randy to suggest? Because otherwise I would imagine she's going to stick with this format. And it seems to work for me. I think it's very clean and clear. Yeah. Okay. Any other comments on that report before we move on then? John?
I don't think we have an org chart, and I don't know if we need an org chart, but is with reconfiguration, would there be any substantial changes to our organizational structure that, especially our leadership structure, was it worth like revisiting like what our org chart, like what it might look like? Or is it still the structure gonna, it seems like it's largely the same, but is there anything else that, as far as our org structure goes, that's going to change substantially with our reconfiguration?
John, which org structure are you referring to?
It's like an org chart, like, as far as like, we having departments and, who's department heads leading, this team of teachers. And I don't need necessarily to have names of each individuals, but are we going to have a different structure of leadership with reconfiguration? Are we going to have, my sense is we'll have, larger departments. I can't remember what you call them. I think you mentioned this in the agenda packet a few times ago, what the teams are called. But my point is like the leadership structure, the organizational structure, is that going to shift anyway, or is it just going to be consolidated? Does that question make sense?
I'm not entirely sure, but I also know that I don't have an answer for you right now. We have department heads right now, and I anticipate that work continuing. We've got, I don't have anything to answer that right now. There's still work is really just getting started right now. So I will keep you updated on anything like
Yeah.
that, but I don't have an answer for you now. I don't have anything to share that is any type of meaningful organizational change.
Okay, yeah, and if you know, I was also wondering if an org chart would add value to look at our system.
For
I-
who, like value for what reason and for who?
Just for how you see and think about our system and its structure. Um, like I don't need. I think this is where a board might. I don't know if it's we're getting in the weeds too much talking about org structure or not. You know, I'm curious to see what org chart would look like, but I don't know if it's an area where I should be sticking my nose. I'll leave it at that.
I'm gonna go ahead to Rogan. Rogan, are you, I guess, I want to make sure that we're not ping ponging here.
I
Super,
was gonna jump in on what John was saying
okay,
real quick about I think that the org structure would be really helpful for parents and family, like the kids. My kids are 10 and 12. They in the car coming home from Stratton today, we talked about how excited they are for who their next teacher is. So who your next principal is, who your next, who's coming, who's going where. I think that's valuable to parents and students, and that's all.
I believe I mean, we have that, right? We've been giving that.
Yeah, I did send that out
Oh,
to
I must have
board members.
misunderstood what John was saying. I'm sorry.
I'm assuming that John, you're talking about who is, let's say, the visual arts department head for the district and who is running, you know, the curriculum for, you know, social studies. I don't, and correct me if I'm wrong. To me personally, I do feel like that's in the weeds because we're not in that purview, but, and maybe this is
Not
even
who, it's how the labor or labor is being organized and directed. And,
right.
But I don't want to.
Could I simplify that question? Maybe, and maybe I shouldn't do this, but Randy, I believe that we have different departments throughout the district, and kind of, I'm using the term department because that's what we use. But when you have social studies teachers or English teachers, and I know we don't call them that anymore, but meeting together and doing work together as part of departments, do you have heads and leaders for each of those?
It doesn't translate the same way.
Okay.
We have a math department head who supports training and professional development for math teachers K-8. That's how it currently is. As far as organizational work, we are not there. You know, I don't have any problem sharing anything. I just have nothing to share right now. Like I wouldn't want to spend the time developing something now when we're in the midst of a transition. So I'm just simply saying that I'll share information with folks when I have it. But I'm if it's something that has a real purpose for you.
Yeah.
I
think that makes sense. If you don't,
that's fine, but I just don't have anything to provide you right now.
okay. Thank you. I think Ben, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. I guess I could just say some sort of a structure chart would eventually be helpful in terms of just thinking about how policy is implemented in terms of, I think that's at the board level, not necessarily who's in each position, but how things are being allocated. But the other point I was going to make was just I appreciate the update and the additions you've made on school reconfiguration. The other thing that we had talked about as a board is just noting in these superintendent reports if there are areas that have been particular challenges. And I can sort of read between the lines in some of these points to say, like, yeah, like, you're telling us about this because these have been important things you've been working on and of note. And but I also just wanted to sort of just keep bringing that up, that if there are things that are a particular challenge or that you're working on that are difficult, that'd be useful for the board to know as an update.
Yeah, no,
to
for
include that.
sure. And in the 2 weeks between our last meeting and the holidays, I
Yeah.
really racked my brain trying to come up with something to put in here that was in that vein. And I will tell you, Ben, I spent a lot of time saying, what can I put in here that is a problem that we're working on that isn't already here? What can I'm like, I really got nothing. So please know it's on my radar. But in that 2 weeks before break with all the things going on, I didn't have anything to share with you. So, but it's
that's
definitely on my
fine. That's
radar.
why I feel like I'm just trying to do my job and keep bringing it up. but as
Okay.
I said, again, there's plenty in here. That's obviously a lot of work, including all the budget work that we have already gone over. So thank you, and Sue, again, for all that.
Thank you, Ben. Anything else specifically to this superintendent update?
So I guess like the renaming.
Mhm.
Principals are really ready to start doing some of this work. And before we launched, I wanted to kind of share with you some of our thinking. As I said in the email that I sent earlier this week, things are very much not linear right now. So sometimes, I do something, then we have a meeting and something changes, and that iterative nature of movement and progress, getting input and things changing will likely continue. So in an effort to try to keep you updated, you will likely find that things, even within a short period of time, end up being updated and changed. But just in general, if you have thoughts, what I'm hearing is, from your perspective, and I'll tell you what I heard from a couple of, mountain people right now was, there's a lot of history in Floodbrook. I appreciate you keeping it as it is. I've gotten a little bit of feedback about the fact that, like, why do they keep kind of being kept completely detached from the system, and is there potential harm in that long term? I don't feel any significant reason to have to change that name right now or to take that step. As it relates to kind of elementary, I put in here those connections. Principals were frankly like, we really think it should be something with Taconic and Green. And maybe, in process wise, I'm going to really work with them about how we roll this out. We like the idea of getting input from stakeholders, but the idea of some controlled choice is probably the most effective way to go about this work. But the idea of getting the names going, including stakeholders in that process, we have some really cool ideas that involves kids in classrooms and, different schools coming together and some kind of big vote, like for those, who are involved as being a way to start really building communities. So they're eager, but I'm very open to any additional input you have before I bring it to them for conversation next week for kind of deciding exactly what we're going to do.
Maddie.
Something I was thinking about, like involving the community and the kids and stuff, is I think it's a great idea to involve the kids, but also, like, sometimes kids will make something like really immature, obviously. So I think that if there is like a theme or a general idea and we give it to the kids, like we were saying, like a valley and the mountain, then they can't really just write whatever they want, and then maybe they choose as a class. So there's not 700 ideas coming in all at once, because it would be terrible to make a promise to the kids that we can't keep if all of their ideas are just, things we can't really choose. So if there's a theme and then they can choose as a class with their teacher, and then there's like 30 choices instead of 700, I think that could be like a good idea. I don't really know how to get like parents and other community members involved, but that's what I was just thinking for the kids.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Maddie.
I think that's exactly what we were kind of thinking with this idea of controlled choice, and even within each school having a process that kind of narrows it down. I'm in complete agreement that a free for all is not going to do anybody any good at this with this
Yes.
process. So thank you. It's a good suggestion, Maddie.
All right, Lindsay, you're up next.
So I read your ideas of somehow incorporating Taconic and Green into the names, and my only concern is that we don't know if we're going to be the Taconic and Green board in a couple of years. So to me, to name the school somehow Taconic and Green, and then in a few years we are Southern Vermont district, so to say, that would just be my concern.
So that is exactly why we wanted to, so that no matter what happens, we're able to preserve us as a community through that name. The idea would be that it keeps, regardless of what happens in the future, this unification for us as a region. So anyway, that was some of the thinking about going in that direction, was to be able to honor this independent of what happens in the future.
And then the only other thing too is I know with like my kids naming a school North and South, I don't know, Rutland has a lot of Rutland Northeast, Rutland West or whatnot, and the kids kind of get confused. So I don't know if there's a way, instead of doing, a North and a South, you do like the TNG Tigers or like the TNG Elephants or something, that it's not like North and South, but like the kids, because like I know the kids really like the whole mascot. They're like the mascot being a part of like their school name. So I'm just thinking of my kids, and North, Northwest, South, Southwest, like those type of things can get confusing, but some way to identify them a little bit different than North and South.
Thank you, Lindsay. Kelsey.
I think 3 points. I totally agree with Madison, or was it Madison who said it about having, I think the students really need to be involved. I really like the idea of doing a class and giving them guidelines about like what we're kind of looking for to kind of guide them instead of getting all sorts of stuff. I agree with Lindsay with the East and the North and the South, because I think it's important that the schools have personality. And then I'm going to say something that is controversial here, and I've already said it to a couple of you. But if Floodbrook is going to keep its name as Floodbrook, I do think it's important that whatever Dorset and MEMS becomes, it should be their own personalities as well. And maybe that ties into like what Lindsay's saying, but I'm having a hard time having it be like TNG North, TNG South, and Floodbrook's Floodbrook. It doesn't feel like we are one district. And I think the community, especially up here, is having a really hard time with what's been going on, and Floodbrook doesn't have many changes. So, and Floodbrook's made it very clear they don't want their name changed, and that's fine. But like, let's work on making a personality within the names for the two schools up here. And get the kids involved, because if you just name it TNG North and South, that's certainly not going to be exciting or get the kids involved and whatnot. But that's all I got right now. Thank you.
I just wanted to say really quickly that I agree with what Maddie said about the kids. I know that a lot of kids and parents are super like skeptical, especially coming from the closed schools. And so I feel like giving them some choice in the matter would really like bring the community together. And want to say quickly, I agree with what Lindsay and Kelsey said about the North and the South. I know I get confused about those, so I think that would be tricky. Also agree with Kelsey on the Floodbrook staying the same and the Dorset and the MEMS building changing the name. That's it.
Sorry, thank you. Jessica.
Hey, I was just going to say, having gone through a couple name changes in the past, like given how expensive it is to do that, I totally hear your point, Kelsey, about like Floodbrook just gets no changes, but I also can see us getting really attacked for changing the name of a school where appreciable changes aren't really happening, because it is so incredibly expensive. And so from a like fiscal point of view, I do really like what you mentioned about like if those other school names get something that's not feeling like it's making up some part of a whole that Floodbrook's not included in, I would agree. I would totally agree with, but I think we would be opening ourselves up a little bit to some criticism if we wanted to just, let's just change all the names right now. So I commend the decision to potentially let Floodbrook stay the same. And I hear and I like the point you made about like, can we figure out a way to make the whole district feel like a whole, even if Floodbrook is still Floodbrook?
Thank you. Rogan, I see you up next.
Yeah, I'm gonna ride along with these guys. Except I'm gonna say Taconic and Green is so unnecessary to be a part of our name. It's like we might as well call our schools Union 76-7 or something. I don't even like. The schools need to have a unique name that they can get behind. Listen to what I said earlier. Like, I know Joanne Prouty. I grew up here. Floodbrook is a unique experience. Just like the new school in Dorset will be, just like the new school in Manchester will be. It cannot be just labeled like Taconic and Green South. Like, whoa. That's it.
Rogan, I love the name Taconic and Green. I think it was the most beautiful thing that we came up with when we came together with Act 46.
Fair point. Fair point.
Just saying.
If we go with Taconic and Green, we know how Rogan feels about it.
Union 6-7 will be better if the kids will like it more.
It is about the bringing together of the Taconic and Green Mountains. It's the coming together and unification. All right,
Yeah,
Ben, let's go so we can keep moving on.
I'll let Rogan and John have that hash out. I think John came up with the Taconic and Green for us. I see Ben next, and I think it feels like Randy's getting a lot of feedback. So if there's nothing new after what Ben says, let's call it there.
So I was just going to go quick. Floodbrook's the name of the river right next to the school. Think about what are the rivers next to the other schools. Like it doesn't have to be super complicated. Battenkill Elementary is a perfectly fine name for Manchester School. It's sitting right next to the Battenkill. So anyway, sometimes it's just picking out what's obvious, and that's a beautiful name and a beautiful landmark in our community. I know it doesn't flow through all the towns, but it's right there. So there you go.
I will say too, though, Ben, don't forget all of Arlington was Battenkill Valley Supervisory Union.
I know. I mean, it's like you were going to have overlap. So but it's in. So
great.
Headwaters, Headwaters Elementary.
Say what?
Headwaters.
Got it. John's renaming already for us.
Okay. Thank you.
Reconfiguration updates. I feel like we went through that. Was there anything else there?
Yeah, it's informational for folks. So I guess what I'm thinking about is sort of this will continually be evolving. So I'll give the current month and then kind of forecast for you what we're looking at ahead to the next month, and that's the cadence that I'm planning on. As things are finished, I will let you know that as well. So. But if you have any questions about what's included here, please feel free to ask. Kelsey?
Sorry. 2 questions. And one is just because I don't have the experience at Dorset. I know you're going to give grade level assignments to teachers. It says in January, so they have an idea. But like, what's the protocol for kids knowing who they'll have next year? I know obviously it won't be in January, but like, is that, May? Is that June? Or are they not going to know till August?
Usually it is depending on, it's usually June. I don't think it's not before June. Okay. Sometimes it's not till August. I haven't given any direction on this. This is just the rooms. Yeah, this is room assignments.
But... Oh, okay. And then I'm just getting a little concerned. Can you just give a little bit more context on the parent-teacher groups from Sunderland, Courier, and Dorset are put in contact with each other? Because I think there needs to be a way maybe I'm not, I don't know how to word this right. But I'm just to how to make them all flow together, because it's going to be a new parent teacher organization, and like
This
know.
This is just making the connections.
Okay.
I'm not.
Are you just gonna let them go with it and have them figure it out? Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't know the answer to that. What I do know is that as we start to bring kids together and as we start to bring teachers together, I think it's important that we also make parent contact. We haven't even had a principal meeting as an administrative team really since everything's happened. That is next week. So all of the details will continue to be evolving. I don't have an answer for you right now. I tend to my leadership style is not to dictate minutia details to building principles in areas that I don't need to. So many of the kind of the process over the next 6 months will be kind of co-decided together, and then different people have different roles and responsibilities. So we're starting to build that out. I think that ultimately, big picture, high level for me at the moment is it's a really good idea for the lead parent folks to be able to have a conversation and connect, right? If parents can start to get to know each other, then that can start to build community. But as far as the establishment of a parent-teacher group, all of that, the details of that will all be developed kind of over time, probably collectively between principals and parents. Okay. Anything else? Okay.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I was muted. We have quite a few agenda items on here. So I would say let's move on to the cell phone policy. This is a model policy. It's not mandatory. Is that right, Randy?
No, it's mandatory.
Oh, it is a mandatory policy. Okay. So we'll need a motion to adopt it, and we can discuss this.
I move to adopt the mandatory cell phone policy.
I think we have to, I don't know why she put it like this. It should be an approval because you haven't, this is the first time you're seeing it, right?
Okay.
Yeah, so it's an approval at this level.
Thank you.
Sorry, I apologize. It doesn't say approve the cell phone policy, but that is the action here, is to approve it.
Thank you, Randy. Do I have a second to approve the cell phone policy? Ben? Thank you. Any discussion? Randy, do you want to bring anything up specifically we should look at? I'm assuming everybody's read it already in the agenda. We can move right into questions.
Yeah, I mean, it is the policy that districts across the state are approving. As it's not probably surprising to people that states are having cell phone policies, that districts are adopting them. And this is really aligned with the practices that we've had in place. We don't allow kids to have cell phones. We haven't for quite a few years.
Thank you. Dick, do you have a question, discussion?
No.
Okay, I guess I'll call it to a vote. I'm guessing Dick was voting for us already. Please, all in favor of approving the cell phone policy, please indicate by saying aye or raising your hand. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Okay, that has been approved. This will move to our next agenda for adoption for a second vote, and that'll be then included in our policies. Next item is this is a board discussion / action item regarding board member attendance at meetings. We don't have a specific motion here specifically, but I will go ahead and just call out like the two. We do not have a policy specifically, but this is called out in policy a couple areas where it is up to the board chair to where is this? I wrote this down. Just to ensure that folks are following along with being in attendance. Discipline will apply to matters such as attendance, preparation for meeting, etc. by the chair. But that's not really defined. I don't know what discipline is or would be. But it is also, we also have a nod to it in the code of ethics that everyone signs when they become board members. That's kind of put out, and I think we use the model from the VSBA, and in there it says attend all regularly scheduled board meetings insofar as possible. So I'm going to put out there before I call on Kelsey and Lindsay, just that, you know, we have it written in policy, the expectation. There is no necessarily repercussion. The only action that I think is specific is that the chair will address it. And, but I don't believe, and from what I've talked to Randy and Dick and David, there's nothing we can necessarily do as a board if folks are not showing up. They're publicly elected officials, right? So I don't know that we can write into policy anything that would remove them. But if you disagree with that, feel free to say. Kelsey, go ahead and call on you.
So I clearly I have thoughts about this, and I've been noodling on it. It sounds like you've said something, so your hand will be low. Oh, yeah, okay. My hand will be lowered. I think we need to have a policy. I'm not saying let's remove them, but as clearly stated at the last meeting, we are not volunteers, and we have taken an oath to be here and do this, and we're all giving up something to be here. And we are getting a stipend. And so, and I know people get sick. I get it. But you can Google, you can, you know, there's lots of ways to be here. And so I think I would appreciate if we could think about if the policy committee could make a policy that if people are less than 75% attendance, that the stipend starts to get deducted. Because are people who don't show up getting the full stipend that the taxpayers are paying for when they're not showing up? Like, I'm really struggling with this one. So it's frustrating for me. It's a hard job. We are getting criticized. We have a lot of big decisions coming up, and it's hard for me to have somebody come in and sit on a couple meetings and be able to make a huge vote, and that's it.
Thank you, Kelsey.
Sorry.
No apologies. I am gonna run through you folks, get all the opinions out there, and then see if there's any resolution. Lindsay, next.
So, as you all know, this is something I brought up a couple of years ago because it gets very frustrating. But I think there needs to be a way that we could do something, because I am assuming if one of us board members were to do something egregious against the oath that we've taken, there's a way for me to be removed from the board. If I was to, if my behavior, I'm sure there's a way. So I'm just not sure how, if there's behavior that I can be somehow removed, how, you know, not coming to meetings, we don't have that ability, because by not having people show up, we're not getting the full participation when other people probably would have wanted that seat and can't have that seat because somebody has it and is not showing up. We
Right.
had this issue with the student reps who were not showing up and we're still getting paid. So I can't imagine that we have recourse for certain behaviors, but we couldn't find a recourse for this type of behavior.
Oh, and I'm going to name that certain behavior. We have a conflict of interest policy is written in, and if there's a conflict of interest, there is a process in there. And I think that's the only one that has a process written around it. And that would be one of the most significant.
If I did something egregious, like, I don't know, beat up another board member or threatened another board member, you know, I'm sure there's a way to remove me from the board because of my egregious behavior, or not. I don't know. I would assume we have something like that besides just conflict of interest.
I don't think we do. But John, go ahead.
Yeah, I think, I don't think we can do anything with policy. I think, but then we always have formal censure in our back pocket. And if someone feels strongly, they can move to censure a board member, and we discuss it. And I've never been part of a censure. When I was on the Manchester School Board years ago, a school board member was censured right before I got on it. But I've never been part of a censure. But they do happen. And if you're censured, that's a signal to the voters that, like, you got to do something about this person. The voters are our check. And I think the only, maybe Dick knows more about censure than I do, knowing not Robert's rules, but that's always something too, if we feel strongly about it.
Sorry, I'm reading through just some censure notes. I think Dick Dale had his hand up next.
I'd like to point out that there are lots of reasons why individuals don't show up at particular meetings. And it is the obligation within the framework of the rights and authorities of what the chair can do to call into question what's going on, to understand why a particular individual might not be in attendance. I think that the code of conduct that we all sign ought to include a statement about expectation. And expectation means exactly what we've said before. To every extent that is possible, you try to attend every meeting. Certainly, you have an obligation to know what transpired at the meeting so that you're not left in total limbo. My feeling is that by and large, we are all responsible and responsive to our constituents. There's an expectation of behavior that is part of the norms of what we have evolved in the Taconic and Green. It seems to me that the chair has the right, after a couple of missed meetings, to call and get in touch with the person to find out what is going on. How can we be helpful? And that's the extent that I would choose to go with respect to attendance, to call on the goodwill and the fact that you stood for election, wandered around, got 60 signatures, and made a commitment to do the job of caring about our kids. So I would be very happy to include a statement about expectations for preparation and attendance. I know that there are other boards where that is made very clear before you accept the job of signing on to be a board member, especially in the world of not-for-profits. Going beyond that, violations of confidentiality, those things we have on the executive committee over the years raised questions about the behavior of individuals, making suggestions about perhaps a different way of approaching the problem. So that's my view on it. You can, of course, censure someone, and probably there will be a lawsuit.
Okay. Yeah, I just thought it might be.
I can't hear you.
Thought it might be useful. I'm on a state level commission, and actually, as a part of the rules, the laws surrounding that commission, it's required that the attendance be maintained. The attendance. A chart of attendance maintained, and periodically that is actually presented and is a part of the meeting agenda, showing who's attended, how many meetings, and how many they've missed. So from a perspective of just getting it out there, one possibility is that we just have essentially a chart of attendance for all members of the board, and twice a year or something like that becomes a part of a board package, so it can become clear to everybody who is attending and who isn't attending. Just a thought. It's a little bit, because we can behind closed doors say you should be coming to meetings, but it's a little more public if it's just a report of attendance.
Thank you, Jim. Rogan. Oh, I'm sorry, Kelsey, you're up next.
Rogan can go first.
Okay. Oh, right. You spoke already. Rogan.
So I didn't have to get the signatures. Deb basically handed the job off. Nobody in Weston wanted it, right? So this year I have to get the signatures. What? I am curious. Do I need to get the signatures soon? Like, when do I need those by? But anyway, so maybe we need to have this. I don't know if that's how Ron. We're obviously talking about Ron. Like, did he have to get signatures to get in, or did he have a situation like mine where nobody else in Mount Tabor wanted the job? In which case, like, what are we gonna do? Nobody wants that job. He obviously had we
had two people for that position, so we did have competition for that position.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So forget anything I had to say.
No, Rogan, that's exactly the case. And it was kind of that was actually a really kind of odd situation, the way that it occurred. But yes, typically we are looking and finding, and it's not a competition.
Yeah, so clearly he wanted to vote on that vote. I think we all saw that. He really cared about that vote. And I respect that. He's got a night job. I can also respect that. But maybe you need to do the due diligence to get the 60 signatures before you ever are able to join. However, saying that, I would have never joined. If you were like, oh, you can have Deb's job, but you got to go get 60 signatures, I would have been like, all right, find somebody else. And Weston would still have no representative.
Right.
So this is a slippery slope. I don't really know what to say, except somebody will take his job soon.
Thank you, Rogan. Kelsey?
Yeah.
Kelsey and then Dick.
Dick can go first.
You've both spoken, so
No, I the hand just stayed up. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, again, he didn't have to get the signatures. There's a number of people that didn't. I think this is a very hard job, and I wouldn't be surprised if somebody else resigns in the next year. Like, I wouldn't. And again, there's big decisions being made. People are very aware of it. And I don't want to have a situation happen again where somebody comes on the board and only shows up for one vote and then disappears. And to be quite honest, I think taxpayers would be very frustrated and infuriated to find out if they're getting the same amount of dollars for their stipend as everybody else who's showing up. And I don't understand why we can't deduct stipend pay based on attendance if it's like less than 50%. I'm struggling with that.
Yeah, that's a voted amendment. So I don't know. I guess If that would even be legally binding, I don't know, because I'm not the lawyer in the room. But that would have to be added to a vote, I would imagine. Randy, you have your hand up. You probably have something to say.
Oh, yeah, my hand is kind of up. That wasn't what I was trying to do. I'm sorry. I was thinking and somehow my hand's sticking up. The voters vote on the stipend. What I don't know is if we can adjust the language on what they vote that says, I don't know what we can do around that. I also wondered about the norms, whether it makes sense for you to consider adding a norm about just a statement in the norms about expectations around meeting attendance, just as a way, since you review the norms, to give you the platform to talk about it if somebody's not following that expectation. So just another kind of way to approach it. I don't have a problem following up on the, what can you do if somebody's not attending, and is there a way to deduct the stipend, if you'd like me to?
I just want to say one other thing. Sorry, I'm bouncing in here. Like, Dick, Melanie has reached out, and there's no response. So, like, what do you do when you have somebody who's gone completely rogue? Like, they're gone.
Yeah.
As a taxpayer, I'm frustrated.
I'm just going to say, Kelsey, I totally get your frustration. I don't know that we can. I mean, we have senators that don't show up, that get voted, and they don't show up on purpose, right? We have been really, really lucky on the Taconic and Green board that most of us we work really well together. We're very respectful of each other. But it's also been, I'm going to say, pretty easy. The conflict, except for the last year, we've been working really hard to come together, and it just changes. And I don't know there's anything we can do to control the behavior of others in this way. But that's my thinking on it. Rogan, go ahead.
Do we get Ron's money?
I don't believe so. It's been voted to go to each board member. So yeah, I mean, it's voted. I mean, I guess, Randy, I'll ask the board, does anybody have a suggestion? It sounds like what's on the table is we can ask Randy to look into rewriting the the language for the vote to see if we can reduce the payment based on a certain percentage of meetings. We would have to decide what that is. There is an option on the table to include it in the norms. And there's also an option on the table to make it part of the board packet with a published chart of attendance. Those are the three things I'm noting. If there's any movement we can make on one of those, let's go ahead and put it on the table. Rogan? No, John?
I love Jim's suggestion. I'd say in the annual report, having a chart with attendance, your own watchdog group. I don't feel strongly about this issue as others, but I like Jim's suggestion. It shows good discipline, self-discipline, if we put in the annual report a chart of attendance.
Okay. Do you want to, is that something we would have to make a motion about, or is that something, I mean, I could just publish that right in my letter.
Yeah, it doesn't need I don't think for that, it doesn't need a motion, whether it's in your letter or whether it's in the annual report, like in the FAQs or something. There's multiple places. I don't think that requires a vote from the board.
I got to think about that. I don't know how much I want to include that just under my name and under my letter, but it's not wrong. I just have to think about it, how I feel about that. Emma, go ahead.
Okay, I don't really feel like I should have a say in the matter, but just in general at BBA for our attendance policy, if you have like 13 or more absences, you get a third of your letter grade deducted, and then 4 tardies equal 1 absence. So hearing what everyone is saying, I'm not saying 13 absences because obviously we don't have 13 meetings, but a system like that, I guess, to me would make the most sense of like, okay, like you missed 2 meetings, like you get however much, whatever deducted. Again, not saying I have like, I don't really have a strong opinion because I've been on the board for like 5 months, but that's how we do it at BBA.
Yeah. I gotta say, I think we have to be really careful too, thinking about if we do by percentage, when people are adding, leaving the board early and being added to it late changes that. So to come up with like a generic 75% number would be tricky if they weren't even on the board, and it's just more work to keep that. But I guess, could I get a straw poll? Do we feel like it's appropriate for me to include?
Also, I can send you a copy of the chart they use on the commission I'm on.
Yeah. I mean, I can think about how to include it just as in, talking about the work that we had this year. But if you'd send me that, that'd be great. I guess I would love, if anybody feels like it's totally inappropriate to put in my letter, I would love to hear that feedback. And even if you want to do it on the side, but any other motion or any solutions people want to offer?
You used to be able to find it online. Like you could go and see people's percentages on the website.
For us or just?
Yeah. It was there last year. I could see it.
Huh.
I have no idea. I'll have to ask Celeste.
Yeah, it also told like how we voted. It used to be you click on the board member and it would tell you like your percentage of attendance and every time everything that came for a vote, how you voted. And so it's not there anymore, but I know what Kelsey's talking about.
Dick?
In my experience, being a member of the Taconic and Green, there have been circumstances that have cropped up that have nothing to do with a lack of desire to attend. We need to be particularly sensitive to an impossible situation that precludes the ability of someone to come. One of our very first board members changed his job 3 months after the Taconic and Green started, and increasingly couldn't attend. And he did everything he could to stay current. He certainly came to every meeting that was possible for him to attend, but it was impossible because of the changed nature of his job. When Ron was talking with the executive committee in the preparation, he indicated that he had a problem because of the timing of his work. Others have had the similar situation. So it seems to me you have to call on the goodwill of people who chose to want to serve and ask them to serve. And then I know that eventually Herb Ogden asked that individual whose job changed to resign. He could have said no. He said yes, because he was responsible.
Okay. I'm not seeing any other solution. Kelsey, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, just one last thing. I guess the executive committee here, I feel like when Ron was chosen, then if there was another person, that wasn't made clear to the rest of the board. Ron's issues about attending was not made clear to the rest of the board. And so there was a failure of communication. And then why was Ron chosen over the other person if he made it clear that he wasn't going to be able to attend? I just feel like the executive board is making decisions and not informing the rest of the board and communicating. I didn't know that he had a night job until the vote came and he had to walk out. I have people in the public asking why board members are leaving right after a vote and not showing up at meetings.
Kelsey, I want to add to that. We didn't know that he had a night job until after we voted him in.
But there's much more to this story, a lot more, which is relatively unfair to why it happened and the way that it happened. And I can say in my perspective and point of view, it was an accident.
I will back it up by saying that was made clear after his job actually changed after we got the letter from him wanting to do it. But I do, and I'm also going to just defend that people have a variety of reasons that they can't attend, and we wouldn't make that public, just out of respect for each other, and respect for us as individuals and human beings and members of the public. And I stand behind that. I mean, we've talked about it being his job because he has a very public job. But generally, I don't think we would. If there are, I'm not going to promise one way or another if I'm going to put this exactly in our letter. I do think it's a great idea to look into if it used to be on our website and maybe continue that. Maybe it got dropped when we redid our website. I love that idea. But if we're not going to have a specific motion and vote on it, I think that's kind of, I think we're going to move on. And maybe we'll follow up with Randy and see if there's something that we can do about getting at least our attendance back on, if we can find out why it was that it got dropped. Rogan?
What if we motion that you've got to be at the very least, you have to be at the summertime getaway, whatever it's called. It's not a retreat. It's the extra long meeting.
But to what extent, I guess, right? Like,
that you just got, if you want your stipend, you just got to be there. That's it. It's like, it's it. It's
yeah,
one
I don't
meeting a year. I don't know. I mean, I
well,
guess
we have
we
to
can
find
come
out
up
if,
with ideas later, but
yeah, Randy would have to find out if we can put something like that even in
yeah,
statute.
legally, right? Sorry.
Right. So let's follow up on the legal thing, and
I just sent Randy and Mel the copy of the attendance chart. I don't know whether it's worth just showing what that looks like
yeah.
to share that, but I can find the right.
I'm sure it's pretty straightforward, and I don't know.
Anyway, take a look at it. You can.
Yeah. Considering the time, to be honest, I think it'd behoove us to move on to the legislative updates, Jim. And if there's nobody opposed to do that, because we want to see if we can get that letter out, and then we still have an executive session on the agenda. So we're pushing it, or have pushed it already. Let's move into distribution work plan. I guess, I'm sorry, I missed that. Any changes to the work plan? This is just a distribution item. Is there any questions about it or anything that people would like to add? Okay, I'm seeing none. Legislative update. Hopefully folks saw Jim's email this afternoon. He wrote, Jim, you can go ahead and describe it. You don't need my words.
Sure. Now this was, one big issue that has been outstanding for a number of years, and is factored into Act 73 and all, is the fact that, we all know that teacher healthcare costs have been growing at a faster rate than most, healthcare costs generally have been growing, but teacher healthcare has been growing at a faster rate than even statewide healthcare, and is increasingly, putting a lot of pressure on budgets. The way we negotiate now, was set in 2018. It used to be our individual districts negotiated with our teachers, salary and healthcare, and then it was moved to a statewide negotiation in 2018. The way they put together that negotiation process was we recognized from the beginning it was going to be a problem. It's been a problem in each negotiation since then. One of the biggest problems is the fact that it's not really set up to be a negotiation, but it's more you get together, you have some talks, then ultimately you end in arbitration, where the arbitrator can only pick one side or the other's proposal. So it's not really a very, it's not well designed to come up with any, useful solutions that could actually, be good from this perspective of employees and employers. So we've been pushing to make some changes to that for for, every year since 2018, we have a decent chance of, partially because of Act 73, of getting something done this year. The VSBA has been spearheading, and they've hired outside consultants to help with the process. There is now a draft bill that's drafted by one of our local legislators, Sandy Pinsino, including most of the proposed changes from VSBA. They're trying to make sure that it gets a reasonably high profile. The letter that I sent out is a letter that's proposed to come out. There are going to be letters coming out all from various places in the state. And we had received, and Mel and I, as representatives of for Bennington region on VSBA, got a form of letter. I did a bit of a redraft, and that's what you guys have in front of you. Mel had some really good input on that. I shared it with some other members of the RSU leadership, and I think we got to the point where people are, that group of people were comfortable. But before we sign it as something from the T&G board, and the Meadowy and Winhall boards are also discussing getting behind this letter in its form. We really need to be comfortable that the board has had a chance to read it, come up with any questions or issues, and hopefully decide to actually support the submitting the letter. As I said, we're looking at probably next week for this to come out. I've already touched base with the editor of the Manchester Journal and Bennington Banner, who's agreed that they'll fit in what we're going to send. So right now where we are is, I'm hoping to take any questions on the letter, on the issue, and hopefully get the board to agree to to sign on to sending this communication. It's really intended to be educating, hopefully it's clear that it will educate our community on why this is an issue for us and why we should be doing something, and have them recognize that we're not out to get the teachers. We want our teachers to have high quality healthcare, but we need it to work for the taxpayers as well. And to the extent that we take something away from our teachers, we know we have to make it up to them.
Do you need a motion?
Yes.
I move that we approve the letter that Jim circulated.
Second.
Thank you.
Kelsey.
Ben.
Okay. Ben.
Thanks, Jim, for drafting this. I think it's excellent, and I'm supportive of sending it. I do think, and take this criticism as far as you want to, but the paragraph, the second to last large paragraph, it seems unnecessary and complicating to the message. Just for the general to the general public. I found the paragraph that it's important to recognize that a better negotiating process.
Yeah.
To me, it muddied the message. I understand. I can read through it and understand it, but if I was a general public reader, I think I would tune it out. So.
Okay. No, it's a very valid point. I think that was a tough one in that it's kind of, well, if you're going to take away something in healthcare and give it back to them on salary, then you aren't accomplishing anything. It's like it does accomplish something. That's what we're trying to get at. I'll take another look at it.
Yeah, I can see the point. Anyway, just trying to think about the op-eds. Often they stretch it towards the end, and so I always find it. I get towards the end, I'm like, okay, I just want this to wrap, and so that's what I was feeling. So
I appreciate that.
All right, John.
Just to get a sense of what the devil's advocate would say, what is, I don't really, it's a little bit lost on me how, I get the idea about the win-win, for smaller bargaining units essentially, but it seems like a larger problem is having to go to arbitration rather than some kind of mediation or some other process. What does the Vermont NEA say about this?
The Run NEA likes it the way it is, likes the way things are right now, because they essentially, they have gotten their way in each negotiation. And what we found the process isn't all bad. The process is you negotiate. Once you can't agree, then you bring in a fact finder. The fact finder takes information and prepares a report for both parties. But then both parties have another chance to decide whether they agree or not. When they don't agree, it goes to arbitration. And the arbitrator, has in the last negotiation that led to a conclusion, even the arbitrator said, gee, there were some good things in the fact finder's report. There were some things that weren't absolutely accurate, but he would have really liked to been able to not just take, one or the other proposal. He said the right answer is combining them, but that wasn't an option.
And Jim, I think I'm going to help specify that it's kind of written in statute that is the process, and that's why this is coming up, and that's why Sandy Pinto is kind of going after it too, because that that's written into law that it must be handled that way.
Exactly.
So yeah, that seems like a larger area.
That's what we proposed to be changed, the negotiating process.
Yeah, and I don't know if like having smaller bargaining unit, like I'd be careful what we wish for, and having us be able to negotiate.
There's no proposal to bring it back to the local boards, because that really would get complicated.
Okay.
The proposal is to lose the last best offer thing in the arbitration, and to allow the arbitrator to pick from one or the other and create a new solution. Also, the criteria that the arbitrator is supposed to consider, when the law was put in place, it seemed like a pretty decent set of criteria. In reality, it's turned out it's missing some things, and so they want to add the things that the arbitrator has to consider when making their decision. There's also a suggestion of the possibility of, adding some independent parties to. Right now, it's the negotiators are 5 from the NEA and 5 from the VSBA. And there's a thought of if you bring some other parties into it, potentially including like the Secretary of Education and some other independent parties, that might help the process. So those are the sort of things that we're looking at changing.
Any other comments or questions before we bring this to vote? Okay. All of those in favor of approving the letter that Jim wrote and having it sent with T&G included as signatures, please raise your hand. Okay, all of those opposed? I don't think I see anyone opposed, right? No abstentions? Okay.
Okay, I just wanted to touch on a couple other quick things. Just to note that, the legislative session is getting going. They're actually up in Montpelier right now. It is getting started. There are going to be some things that come out with respect to education. We're already hearing a few of them, and honestly, I think we'll try to keep everybody up to date and start providing some written info, because some of these ideas can sound kind of reasonable until you really think about it. So we had, one legislator come to Julie Mock, from Medowee, suggesting, gee, should I sign off on this, where, to close any school would require the town being impacted to vote to close that school. And you look at it, and, you know, some people are saying, well, you know, people should have that right. And we can kind of apply that to our situation with our reorganization and how, you know, essentially something like that can sound very reasonable, but it actually would make it basically impossible to close any school in the state of Vermont, probably. There are other proposals out there right now that are gaining some traction that I think also ultimately won't make sense, and we can get into why. But like, people are suggesting, you know, why don't we limit every school district, you know, their budget in the future just to be, you know, frozen in place at the current levels, or, you know, have an increase of, you know, 2% for every budget across the system. And it kind of, you know, when you get into the details, and you start realizing there are over and underspending districts now, and freezing everybody at those levels, or you know, with small increases, doesn't really solve the spending problem. So, you know, I'm just kind of throwing that out because those are two things that I've heard in recent days. I think we're going to start seeing some proposals coming out of the legislature that may sound kind of like, gee, that's not a bad idea right off. But we'll try to, the VSBA does a pretty good job, and I'll try to help us as well, you know, better understand what some of those proposals are.
Thank you, Jim. Sounds like there's not a lot of school board members on the in the legislature.
There are a lot of people.
Well, okay. Future, we voted on that. Yes. Future agenda items. I see no hands. I hear no voices. Public comment for 10 minutes. I think we only have a few folks on here. If anybody has anything they would like to add for public comment, now is a moment. And I don't see anyone. So item number 11, would somebody like to go ahead and make that motion? A motion to go into executive session.
I move to find a motion to find that premature general public knowledge regarding arbitration or mediation clearly places the board at a substantial disadvantage because the board risks disclosing mediation strategy or legal position in public. B, a motion to enter executive session to discuss arbitration mediation under the provisions of VSA Title I, Section 313A, Section 1.
Okay, thank you. So I have a second.
I'll second the first. I think we need to do it in two motions. I'll second the first motion.
We have to do them in two. Thank you. Lindsay, do you want to second the second one then? Can I write you down? Okay.
I'll second it.
I got too late, David. I got Jim first, seconding the first motion, and Lindsay seconding the second motion. So let's go ahead and vote on the first motion. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Raise your hand. Any opposition or abstentions? I see none. So that passes to go into, and then item 11B. Please signify by saying aye to pass the motion, or saying, yeah. Any abstentions or any nays? No. Okay. Both those motions passed. Sorry, guys. I'm kind of sick and I'm tired. So
Okay. So I can't tell on my screen how many people in the public are here. So I've created a breakout room.
Okay.
I'm just gonna call board members' names to make sure if I'm forgetting anybody. Okay, because I haven't done this in a long time. So Alex, Ben, David, Jeff, Jessica, Jim, John, Kelsey, Lindsay, Mel, Dick, Rogan. Did I miss anybody? Okay, so we will go into a breakout room. I'm going to take the board members into a breakout room, and we'll return to open session when we are done.
And Emma, I would say that Emma, you can feel free to.
Yep. I can't even tell who's here because when I step out, then I lose my breakout room.
Got
So
it.
anybody else should feel free to leave. I just can't quite tell who's here. So, okay. So let's see how this goes. I'm opening the room now.
Emma, are you sticking around or you're taking off?
Should I just wait here?
You
And
can
then-
do either. I would
You
say that
don't have to.
Yeah, I wouldn't
Okay.
worry about it.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma.